Microsoft are going all digital. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone at this point, because we've been told about it for quite a while. Not that long ago, of course, we had those leaks that essentially gave us a roadmap, and within the roadmap there was a console refresh. And that refresh should happen by the end of this year. We've not had any news on it yet, but under content delivery of the refresh, it was stated that it would be all digital, meaning of course that the Series X that currently has a disk drive will come out at the end of the year looking like a cylinder from what we gather, and it won't have a disk drive. I've covered this in a video, so in that video I gave you my opinion, and my opinion was I think Microsoft are trying to phase out physical altogether, and going into the next generation, which isn't actually that far away, we probably won't have a disk drive from the Xbox console. It will essentially be a Series S, but of course it will have the most powerful hardware available, so there won't be two variants of the console, one with a disk drive, one without, one less powerful than the other, yada yada yada. The reason I'm making this video is because Microsoft have just laid off a lot of staff. There's staff from the Xbox side of things, from the Blizzard side of things, but what we're going to focus on here is the physical games department, the team that was responsible for bringing physical media to the market. If you walk into a shop and you see Forza physical disc on the shelf, the team behind that are no longer employed by Microsoft. When this console refresh comes out, it is likely that we won't have a disk drive. So the panic is setting in. Well, is that the end of physical as far as Microsoft are concerned? If I've got a Series X with a disk drive, is it now redundant? Past the end of 2024 at least? And no, I don't think so. I think they'll outsource everything going forward until the end of the current life cycle. The one thing I will say though, is that they are going to scale this. They will be able to gauge the amount of physical sales, and then they will scale back the amount of physical games that they release. So when you walk into a store now and you want to buy the new Forza, for example, chances are they have it in stock. You don't really have to worry about that. But going forward, after the refresh, I imagine you'll encounter a lot of, sorry, we don't have any in stock, because retailers will likely only carry one or two copies past launch anyway, because the majority of people are playing these games on Game Pass, downloading them for themselves, rather than having a physical copy. And it is my firm belief that the next generation of consoles, at least from the Microsoft perspective, will be all digital. But I think many people will kind of rely on Game Pass. As many of us do now that own Xboxes, you'll probably have Game Pass. And of course you still have the option to download games and pay for games and get them and own them digitally. And I say own them digitally, you don't own anything. And that is, in my opinion, and many others of course, where the problem is. You don't own anything you buy digitally. You are licensing that, essentially. You are renting it. You don't own it. There was an instance at the end of 2023 where Sony came out with a statement that said if you've bought any, I think it was like Discovery content, that it was going to be removed from the store and removed from your device. You were no longer able to download it, and if you already have it downloaded on your console, they were going to delete it full stop and you wouldn't be able to watch it. And it was due to a licensing issue. Now, unfortunately, that is something that will happen, and it's one of the reasons why when you watch Netflix today, you'll see a show or a film or whatever it may be on there that you think, oh, I quite like the look of that, I'll watch it at some point. And then eventually, in a month's time, 2 months' time, when you remember that you want to watch that, you're in the mood for it, you go look for it, it's not there. It happened the other day with Scream. I wanted to watch the Scream 1 to 4, I've seen the new ones over and over again, I want to go back and watch 1 to 4 again, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So the worry with the whole digital physical thing, a lot of people don't have physical collections, and that's fine, but if you decide one day you want to play a certain game and it's not on Game Pass, it's not on that service, this service, you know, you've got other companies now trying to start up their own services, and it would not surprise me at all to see what's happened to movies and TV shows happen to video games with all these streaming platforms. But the issue will come when you want to play that one particular game that has been taken off a certain service. It was on Game Pass a couple of weeks ago. You fancy playing through it now, it's not there anymore. Then what do? Do you have to go buy it digital? And if you do buy it digital, what happens if the license runs out on said game and they just have to remove it? There's nothing you can do, there's nothing they can do. You are heavily reliant on these companies having all their agreements in place long term in order for you to be able to play these games whenever, wherever, and however you wish. Side note, I don't think Nintendo, I wouldn't say ever, but for the foreseeable anyway, I don't think Nintendo will move away from physical, because they like to, not only do they like to be different, which is kind of the angle that I'm going for here, but I think Nintendo have just that little bit more, I'm going to struggle to find the right word, it's not respect, it's not class, but it's something about them that you just feel that they are going to keep physical. They love all their little knickknacks, you know, they were the ones that brought out things like Amiibos, for example, and the majority of people who own Switches or Nintendo products in general, they love physical games and they love the collectibles that go alongside it and the plushes and all this, that and the other little knickknacks that come with a lot of Nintendo products. So I don't really see Nintendo doing that. And if Sony decide to go down that route and only bring out an all-digital console as well, Nintendo will probably double down on the physical because they know that physical collectors will probably move over to Nintendo because they can't get their physical fix anywhere else. And Nintendo do like to be different, let's be honest with each other. They don't try and compete. They go after the more niche things and they like to bring the indie stuff over. They have their own first-party titles. They don't need to worry about power and graphics. Sony, it's a little bit more up in the air. I would imagine that they would stick with physical, but at the end of the day, you just never know. And I know a lot of people will be saying, well, look, most people will buy their games digital. And I do understand that, and I do have like a rough figure that 80% of people who play video games will buy their games digitally. And at the moment, there's a controversy surrounding Xbox, Call of Duty, and Game Pass. A lot of people thought it was coming to Game Pass, apparently it's been leaked that it isn't, and this shouldn't really be a surprise to anyone. And I'm going to use movies as an example. When a movie comes out, it goes to the box office and it makes its money. And then eventually, a couple of months later, maybe even a few weeks later in some cases, it ends up on a streaming platform and it'll make a little bit more there. Back in the day, the streaming platform didn't exist and it was DVD. And that's where it would make a big chunk of money. It would come out in the box office, make loads, go to DVD, and it would be like a second box office. This has been confirmed by many people. I watched a video recently where Matt Damon spoke about it, and it makes a lot of sense. So if we come back to the Xbox scenario, if they threw Call of Duty on Game Pass, are they going to make as much money as they would just sticking it on the store for 70 quid? Absolutely not. They still need those box office sales. So even though I'm saying I fully expect to see a gaming version of Netflix in the future and all these companies popping up doing these streaming services, I do still believe that that will happen, but you still need box office. So you still need day one releases that aren't on these streaming platforms, and that is where physical is going to have to remain to shine. 20% of all video games sold are physical. That is a lot of games. So if these companies decide to bin off physical altogether, they are relying on that 20% to now go and buy the game digitally. Some, including myself, won't do that. I'm going to wait until it does end up on a streaming platform, or it gets massively discounted digitally in the store and I can pick it up then, rather than going day one and buying the physical disc, because not only do I get to play it there and then, I get to have something physical that goes into my collection. And to completely disregard and bin off that 20% is a bold move from a company like Microsoft. Will it pay off for them? I genuinely don't know. But when it comes to Sony, I don't quite think we're there yet with them. But with that being said, we are seeing brick and mortar stores cut down the amount of physical games they are selling. HMV, for example, they always used to carry video games, and they went through a period where they had a lot of pre-owned as well. They started getting into that, and now you walk into a HMV store, they have one bay where they don't have any physical display cases. It's all just pictures of what they have, and maybe they'll have it out the back, maybe they have to order it in or whatever. Game is disappearing off the high street altogether. CEX are around and they are thriving, and they're still opening stores, of course, but they don't really deal in new. They deal in pre-owned. And yes, of course, there needs to be new for someone to buy it to be able to trade it in, but there will always be a market for a company like CEX, because of course we have games from older generations all the way up till PS5. Even if the next generation of console bin off physical games altogether, they'll still be able to deal in all of the retro, and I think that that will probably be enough to sustain the business model. And of course, they deal in movies as well, and we could go down that rabbit hole if we really wanted to, but we are seeing a lot of physical stores just get rid of movies altogether now as well. The amount of choice that you have for Blu-ray and 4K, it's there, but it's becoming less and less, and we're seeing it less and less on the shelves in physical stores. And I've touched upon it in this video with regards to you buy something digital and you feel like you own it, but you don't really. You only have to look at the likes of the Nintendo eShops, for example. I think it's this year, or maybe they already have, but they were closing the Wii U and the DS store down. And if you don't have said game that you want from that platform downloaded, then you can't ever get it again. But if you've never bought it, and in the future you maybe want to play it, you'd either have to get it physical or you can't play it at all. And there are plenty of games that don't have physical releases already. It is a very, very disturbing time if you are a physical, not necessarily even a collector. You don't have to be a collector to be concerned about this. But if you own a console that has physical media that you buy every now and again, you should be worried about this. If we could all somehow up the percentage from 20% of people buying games or buying physical to 30, maybe 40%, then I absolutely believe that Microsoft would bin off any plans they have for an all digital and possibly move into that physical space, or rather remain within that physical space. But as they've been trying to do this since around 2013, I really don't think there's anything stopping Microsoft now. They have Game Pass, the infrastructure is there, they're set up for it. They've just made another move by laying off staff from this one particular department. They are poised to commit to digital, and that is a very sad affair. I get it. If this video just popped off and got 4 million views and half of you went out, that's 2 million people went out and bought Switch games, PS5 games, Xbox Series X games. Do you really think that 2 million sales of physical media is going to do anything? It won't. I doubt that they'd even notice a blip. It would be the most minute little speck. So I more than understand that me saying go and buy physical media, it is the answer, but it's not going to do anything. But that's the only way that we can preserve physical media for the future and for future consoles, is if everyone just starts buying it, which is obviously not going to happen. Let me know your thoughts on the situation in the comment section. Do you hope that physical media continues, or are you now moving over to digital yourself and you're happy to collect all the retro, and going forward you'd just be happy to live off subscriptions, Game Pass and digital? If you want to check out another video from me, you can click here, and until the next time, goodbye.